Hey y'all, A0 here. Today I want to talk about the current iPad range and give my thoughts on which models you should be considering and which you should be avoiding. I have used all the newer iPads in this range, and I personally own the 5th generation iPad Pro 12.9 inch that you see here, and also the 6th generation iPad mini that you see here. There's also the 9th generation iPad, the 5th generation iPad Air, and the 3rd generation iPad Pro 11 inch.
So just to jump the gun a bit here, if you just want to know my answer as far as which iPads to avoid, in my opinion, the two to avoid in this current lineup are the 11-inch iPad Pro and the M1 iPad Air. Now, why that is, we'll go over. But first, I just want to talk about the two I own and the other iPad in the lineup, which is the 10.2-inch iPad 9th generation. So as far as that one, honestly, that's probably the best one for most people. It's got basically everything you need as far as a tablet. It has the A13 chip in it, which sounds dated compared to the M1 or the A15, which is the chip from the current iPhone lineup. But it's still a very powerful chip. It even compares favorably to the current Android chip that is being used by most devices, which is the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. They've improved it dramatically compared to the previous generation. Well, maybe dramatically is oversaying it, but it's got a way better front-facing camera, up from 1.2 megapixels to 12 megapixels, same as the one on the Mini and the iPad Air. It's ultra wide, so it has the center stage ability as well as those other cameras, and it's nice for video calls. And messenger calls and things like that, because you can also use it with that and other apps that support it. It tracks you, you probably heard about it. It's a great feature, and I enjoy it a lot. I like, that's one of the reasons I like the iPad mini here, which I'm jumping to next. If you want a iPad with a newer design, they updated this one to look kind of like the Air, but a mini version obviously. The screen is now 8.3 inches instead of 7.9, so it's slightly bigger than the previous generation, the old design, but that's not a huge reason to get it. Of course, it's the mini, so the screen is the smallest of all of theirs in the range for the iPads, but that's part of its charm too. It's a portable, very portable device. I ended up getting one when I had this big boy over here already, mainly because of this portability. It was so lightweight, so easy to handle and use while in bed and things like that. After kind of physical work, so I'm tired in the day, I don't have as much strength, so it's easy to kind of get in and just watch my YouTube or one of my streaming services that I have. So it's become pretty much my favorite iPad. I use it the most. The M1 version I got is the cell data SIM card tray. So I use that one when I travel. I travel a lot. You can see it in some of my other videos. So I love having that in case I don't have Wi-Fi for an extended period of time. It's something that the MacBooks don't have. So it's a nice little feature, even though I have a MacBook Air as well. It's good to kind of pair these two, and you can also use it as another screen. The screen being so big, it's basically like the same size as my MacBook Air 13-inch screen, and on that this was 12.9. So, and it looks a lot better than that screen. It's the Retina screen on the MacBook Air, excuse me, and on the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, it's the mini LED screen, which is really nice. I personally still kind of like OLED a bit more, but it's the best screen you get on an iPad, and it's one of the best screens Apple offers. It's a really good screen, which comes to the other iPad Pro. You know, you think that won't be a good one to recommend. It's less expensive than this one, and it's the same thing, just smaller, right? 11 inches. But no, the big difference between these two is that they decided not to put the mini LED on the 11-inch iPad Pro. So the 11-inch iPad Pro pretty much has the same screen as the iPad Air and the iPad Mini. The only difference being that it has a 120 hertz display refresh, so it looks a lot smoother in the animations and things like that. If that's an important feature to you, then it might be worthwhile, because that is the lowest amount you can pay for an iPad when it comes to the base model that has 128 gigabytes of data. To get the M1 coupled with the 120 hertz, which brings me to the iPad Air. So I don't have an M1 iPad Air here with me, but I've tried that model out, and the main reasons I don't recommend that one is because it's a 12.9-inch screen, which is comparable to the 10.2 inches on the original iPad, which costs a lot less, doesn't weigh too much more, so it's very comparable to the Air in many ways. The biggest difference being the chip, of course, and the design. So yeah, I understand some people might be tired of the old design, but honestly, the touch button on the original iPad is kind of nicer than reaching up for the power button on the other iPads with Touch ID. So until they put Face ID on the Air, it's not a huge advantage. Also, the Air has durability issues. There's been plenty of reports of people having durability issues with the Air since it's come out, and Apple hasn't addressed these so far. So honestly, it's a bit of a risk to even get one, because it could have that problem. The starting storage of both iPad and the iPad Air are 64 gigabytes. They've raised that from the 32 gigabytes of the previous iPad models. So even that's not a big leap for the Air, unless you get a bigger size, which you can also get for the original iPad. So again, not very much of an advantage there. It has USB-C on the Air versus still using Lightning ports on the iPad. So that's one huge advantage. Then the other advantage is that the speaker grills are on both sides of the Air, which is nice. So you get surround sound in horizontal mode, but they both have two speakers. The iPads are both down firing speakers. So give or take, it's not a huge advantage. It has the M1 chip, which is nice. And it'll last for a long time. It'll have great longevity because of that chip. But because it doesn't have a 120 hertz display, it's basically like the little chip is limited by not having that feature. Plus, iOS is already kind of limiting M1 as we speak, where on all the devices with M1, where the A15 can keep up just as well, even though it's less powerful than the M1 chip. Because iOS isn't that difficult to run. The biggest advantage the Air has over the Mini is that it has 8 gigabytes of RAM in the base model versus 4 gigabytes of RAM, but again, it doesn't affect the performance whatsoever. This Mini runs everything just as well as my M1 Pro here, 12.9 inch, so there's virtually no difference in any of the apps on iOS, reading the menus or anything like that, surfing the web, things of that nature. If you have a lot of apps open, because I have the base model M1 iPad Pro 12.9 inch, it still comes with the 8 gigabytes of RAM as well, like the Air. So it does have more RAM, so it can have more windows open and apps before it starts chatting or anything like that, compared to the Mini. But the Mini can keep up very well for the things that I use it for, which is mainly just casual use, watching videos, things of that nature, surfing the web, using apps. Whereas with the M1 Pro here, I can do a little bit more, although I use Procreate on both as well. To both use the Apple Pencil 2. It works great on both devices. I have even the paper screen protector on this one, because I use the pencil a little more on there for notes and things of that nature versus the screen protector that's just glass on the M1 iPad Pro here. So it just depends on your use case is the most important thing that you look at and what you want to use iPads for. But honestly, the base iPad 9th generation is great. It gives you everything you need. It runs iOS flawlessly. It only has 3 gigabytes of RAM, but that's more than they've had previously. So it's going to last a lot longer than previous generation iPads have. And being released just last year, of course. The only other exception would be to wait until this year's iPad comes out. Everybody's expecting a refresh this year. They're expecting chips to at least get updated. There won't probably be much else. A lot of people are saying it's not going to have USB-C, which is one of the biggest difference between the regular iPad and the Mini and all the rest. They all have USB-C ports now compared to the Lightning port, which has some advantages, of course. But the battery lasts so well on the iPad now. The 9th generation one I'm talking about, the regular. It's not super problematic to me. I have it charged with Lightning. It charges a little slower than USB-C, but like I said, battery lasts so long. It's like I don't really charge at night when I have one. So it's a good rate device. It runs really well. The biggest reason to upgrade is if you retire that old design. Although I think the touch button on there is great. It's big. It's a little easier to hit than kind of the one here on the Mini. And the Air has the same design with the power button there, which just has Face ID on it, so it just unlocks with Face ID, which for me, it's not a big deal breaker either way. Both work great. I don't really have a preference myself. I've gotten used to it on the phone now, but even that, I usually just use my password and things like that. Sometimes it's kind of frustrating, especially in the mass situation where you're trying to unlock it and it's not unlocking it. It takes a while for the password to pop up, but that's different.
In conclusion, these two are the best iPads if you ask me. The iPad Mini is great for, if you need an iPad on the move, and the 12.9 inch is the best for viewing experiences because of Mini LED, and it's the only one in the range that has that screen technology. Looks great to get deep blacks and to watch HDR content.
You find great deals on the Mini as well. I got mine pre-owned not too long after it came out. I've had it for months now, and I got it for a little over $400, which it starts at $499 for the base model, which is the Wi-Fi model with only 64 gigabytes of memory. So I got a pretty decent discount. Please like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Thank you for watching the video, and you all have a great rest of your day. Take care now.